Now, here's a story. Sam Ashworth Hayes is assistant comment editor at the Daily Telegraph. And he spent a day in Britain's asylum courts and found out why the system is fundamentally broken. Now, I thought, Sam, and by the way, welcome to the programme, I thought we covered every aspect of asylum and what was going wrong, but we clearly had not got our eyes on this. Tell me exactly what happened and what you saw.
Of course. So it was following the Abdullah Zedi case. I wanted to go in and sort of...
And this was the man...
The Clapham attacker.
That committed the horrendous alkaline attack on Clapham Common.
Exactly. And I wanted to sort of find out a bit about how this has happened and how he'd be permitted to stay. And I'd talked to a former immigration official, and he'd said, well, what you have to understand is this sort of person with a criminal record being allowed to stay in the country is not a glitch, it's a system working as intended. And
as intended?
As intended. So I then said, well, OK, I have to go and see what this is in person. So I picked pretty much a random court, whichever one had hearings that day. I went in, I picked cases based on which one happened to be starting. I didn't pick them out in advance, I didn't know what I was going to hear. First case, someone comes in on a tourist visa in 2021. They're still here. They're receiving treatment on the NHS for mental health issues, which means they can't leave. And then when they sort of go through the legal arguments, their lawyer says, well, you can't send them back because the Home Office says India is not a safe place to travel as a lone woman, and that's what her situation would be. So that case ends, I get shuffled off to the next one. Person came in on a student visa, a 14-month student visa.
Yep.
They've been here for 17 years. They made the Home Office aware they were here several years ago, applied for regularisation. We're not granted it, we're not deported. The Home Office did not bother to send a lawyer to the case, so it was just her lawyer and the judge.
How does that? Let's just stop you there.
Yeah.
The Home Office were not represented at the hearing.
They were not. And
why?
They just didn't send a presenting officer. And this is
Isn't their job to enforce the law?
Well, you would think so. And it's not that uncommon, because you go through the data, and actually, I think for the last 6 quarters or so, 10% of sort of asylum cases, the Home Office has not sent a presenting officer. Immigration cases and asylum cases, I should say.
Yeah.
But it sort of gets worse than this, because I've been talking to these former officials, I've been talking to people who worked in this policy, and they will say to you, the law, as it basically currently is, means that people very rarely get removed. And because they don't get removed, and because they're here for a long time, they build up legal claims which they can then use to deny being removed in the future. And there's this wonderful figure, well, terrible really, which I think something like 60% of the failed asylum seekers who came in between 2010 and 2020 had not been removed by 2022. So 60% not been removed. They had no claim to be here. They haven't been removed. And sort of among their number, you had Ahmad al-Swilmin, the Liverpool hospital bomber, someone who should not have been in the country, who had no right to be here. But we've basically lost the ability to remove people whose immigration status is, clearly denied.
A couple of points on that. I mean, one of the first points is when I argue with lawyers who fight asylum claims, and I say, look, all these people crossing the channel, they're all young men, or 90% of them, it's all illegitimate. I'm told, no, Nigel, you're wrong, because a huge percentage of these get granted asylum, therefore they are genuine refugees. What you're telling me is actually it's incredibly easy in the court to get past, with almost nobody standing up and defending the government position.
So it's a really interesting point, because I don't know how these cases ended. Because I've been trying to get the information out of the various sort of government offices which have it. I know they have it, but they're making it very hard to get out. But what I can say is when you go back to the asylum cases, France is accepting 28% and we're accepting 76%.
Yeah, I saw some Albanian stuff about 18 months ago that we were accepting 50% of Albanians and Germany was accepting 0.
Exactly. And so there's obviously something awry in our handling of these cases, in our handling of the legal system, in the way the Home Office enforces it. And there's, the more you dig, the worse it gets. The budget for immigration enforcement is something around 500 million a year. We're spending 4 billion supporting asylum seekers in the UK. We're spending something like, I think it was 50 million over the last few years on legal aid for asylum cases. So you sort of look at these figures and the emphasis is just not there on removing people who are supposed to be removed.
So it's easy to game the system in the court and get granted asylum. And even if you do not get granted asylum, you've got a better than 50% chance of being allowed to stay anyway. And yet, this issue, it's a massive political issue in the country. There's a very clear majority of people think this is wrong, think it's unfair in so many ways. And what you've said today will actually magnify that sense of injustice.
Yeah.
Why, oh why have a Conservative government not seen this as a massive electoral opportunity? Or just, Sam, have they just lost control?
I think they essentially have they've let the system slip beyond their grasp because there's so many moving parts and it's so complicated. And I think in a way, the hostile environment was basically an admission of failure, that they were no longer able to remove people, that they were no longer able to keep people from coming in. So just try and make it a bit harder to stay here. But you can see people can live here for 17 years irregularly and be basically
Have
fine.
you raised that? I mean, you've done the journalistic work on this on behalf of the Telegraph, and well done you. Have you raised this with the relevant ministers?
I've discussed it with some politicians. I can't really say who I've
No, sure.
with, but it's not yet been gone to the Home Office. So perhaps perhaps the next step is to go and demand, why are you not fixing this?
Well, please do.
Yeah.
And come back to us when you get an answer, and we will, broadcast it here on air, because I think, as you say, you come here illegally, you overstay your visa, you then get free mental health treatment on the National Health Service, and that then becomes a reason why you should stay. I mean, we need some proper answers to this.
Yeah. And I want to know how these cases were resolved, and they're making it very hard to get the information out because they do not publish asylum courts results in the first tier. They do for the appeals, but not for the first tier.
Well, Sam Ashworth Hayes, thank you for coming in and giving us that story. It is thoroughly depressing in every way, but it's also quite enlightening.
Thank you.
As to what's going on. Thank you for joining us. Come back to us with the answers.